Hey, what's up? Back with another one. What I wanted to say is, I was talking a little bit about like food, and then um, where I was going is that, if you were to, there was a movie from the '90s. There was a lot of like really outstanding like art in like there's a lot of creativity within uh, media in the '90s, and like some people might wonder like where did all the creativity of the '90s go, or like the times past, not only the '90s but other times past. Where did some of that creativity go? And I think that you could maybe appreciate that the actual incentives for creativity are now different than they were then, because the dynamics around compensation, also the dynamics around like gatekeeping of opportunities to create are different, and then also the compensation for creativity is different. So they say a necessity is the mother of invention. So it's not that we are more or less creative than we were then, but the incentives, the access of opportunity and the incentives are different. So that would actually change some of the nature of what's created, just how it's going, people are going about it, how, when, and where, how, and why people are going about it. I don't mean to say why as though I can understand why someone would undergo creativity, because that's really deep, and that might have a lot to do with why someone is here in the first place, if they have passion and interest around creativity. But all I meant to say is that the incentives are different. So we have, you can see that a lot of things are different than what we had in the '90s. But in the '90s, there were a lot of films, like a lot of outstanding like action films. But I would say too much of action films, because everything had a gun on it in the '90s. But then also there was like a lot of like scary movies and dramas and thrillers that were outstanding in the '90s, such as like maybe your Friday the 13th films, your stuff like that. But one of them, there was a movie called, but then they had like a lot of really dark films in the '90s too, and one of them was called Seven, and I think it was a killer of some kind. It's very similar to some of the movies that we have now, that the scary movies, of where it's like a person who's like a lethal like killer of some kind, but they have like some kind of strange thing about like how they go about it, or like where or how. And so this person was like a religious a religious fanatic that was attacking people that they perceived as breaching some form of like religious conduct, as in the seven deadly sins. So they were accosting and approaching victims that they appreciated as having broached or breached the seven deadly sins, and then heinously assaulting them according to the sin that they had. So it was like, for all of your deadly sins. And then one was like the sin of gluttony. And like I don't mean to say sin for someone that struggles with that, but just what's called the sin of gluttony as it's presented in that film, and that I think reference to biblical text, is that a lot of people wouldn't understand. First, some people might not understand a sin. My understanding of a sin is that it's something that a sin is something that where a person has consciously chosen to injure themselves or another person, which are both themselves. And the real sin is to injure ourselves, whether directly or in the form of another person, which is also ourselves, to efficiently and consciously injure someone or something that is ourselves ultimately, but also different from us. And that's a sin. And gluttony would fit into any of the other sins as potentially dangerous. Where I'm going to go with this video is, I think that gluttony might be the bigger sin, the more dangerous and detrimental sin to the systems and the viability of Earth, and the viability of Earth as supporting its life systems, beyond even any of the other what are called the deadly sins, or human shortcomings. I would say that gluttony might actually be the principle of which, and actually the actual real damage that we're suffering in so many outcomes and trends. A lot of things that are very pernicious, that means like it's like inimical, like pernicious is like it's doing damage very subtly and covertly, yet efficient. Like, if you can imagine poison administered over a long period of time, where it doesn't reveal itself as a cause of horrible outcomes, but it's yet working under the radar, almost like a virus working in a system, like on a computer system or in a living system. And gluttony, I would say, would be the chief one, I think, to my taste, even though I work in food service, and that's where I was going with this video. But you wouldn't appreciate how violent gluttony is to a person. the advertising that was aimed at that person, the way that food, you actually can't film like slaughterhouses in the United States. It's illegal to conduct footage of slaughterhouses. I think that's because my pet theory is that so much of our economics is predicated on consumption, especially food consumption, for first and foremost. Is that maybe not first and foremost, but most people adhere to their expenditure on food more so than anything else that they appreciate as meaningful, as useful, or just expendable. It's still the food that is what people are willing to pay for and will pay for is food. So you could almost say that food is our real means of currency, or the real standard of currency, even beyond silver and gold, because it's going to come down to food. But because of that, if you were to actually reveal some of the reality of what we're consuming, how some of the atrocities of what is having its life essence stripped of it, but then the curation of food, the preparation, the slaughtering, the reality of what we're consuming, both intellectually, morally, but also just the strict reality, it would actually take away a lot of people's appetite. Like the insult that I got from a family member last fall that I'm still affecting my appetite to a degree. It would affect the bottom line a lot if people actually knew what's going on around consumption. But all I meant to say is that you wouldn't appreciate how violent gluttony is, but it is a form of violence in the advertising to influence someone to do something against their own will is, and their true interest is violence in itself. But then to do so in a way that you understand you simply understand is going to injure that person, cost them quality of life, because when you become unhealthy, it affects your quality of life. Their financial standing, whatnot. That's a high degree of violence, and it's more, anything is more so violent when we participate. So I've made other videos saying that one of the things that's so hurtful about like what would be like sexual misconduct of some kind is that to engage a person, to touch a person, it obliges a form of participation, because we can't help but identify with the experience that is participate, and our own participation is a lot of what the real damage had been, because we can sustain almost anything, but our own efforts to injure ourselves, or our own participation or allowing of ourselves to be injured, is far and away more hurtful than anything that can be done from without. And that's also a little bit where I want to touch in the next video. I want to touch a little bit on flattery, which is that flattery is part of abusive dynamics. But it's also it's troubling in a lot of senses, even in like advertising or romance, both romance and like mass consumption of romance, like some of your older romantic literature and art, as it's flattering, and then also a lot of advertisement that's problematic, and that's actually a tip off of an abusive, damaging, detrimental dynamic. And I want to talk a little bit about that, but the gluttony would have to constitute a high degree of violence because of the conscious intent and understanding that this type of influence is gonna injure a person, or encourage them to injure themselves, and then their own participation, whether their own indulgence in their appetites, agreement with their appetites, agreement with the advertising, enjoyment of the appetites, enjoyment of the advertising, while understanding on some level that they're harming themselves, and in fact harming themselves. It's a conscious, it's very gluttony, food consumption is very close to even things like the word that starts with S that I won't say. There's a film where they were making a joke. It was one of your comedy films where this person was like threatening harming themselves, and then right after that, after they came around to feeling better, then they worked up an appetite, and they're making like humor, like you can be that hungry, you can be that willing to hurt yourself, and then have an appetite like that. But there's actually a deeper connection between your appetite and your will to live. And so abuse of food, abuse of substance, but abuse of food is similar to an abuse of our own life, like is in self-harm. And so it's the same type of energy, and so it's very violent when it's not serving us.